Picture this. You are a nun committed to the Lord and living a pure life with other nuns in a monastery. You wake up one day feeling unwell, so you go to the doctor. Let's tell the story of the nun who got pregnant and sealed her baby in the walls. It was in the early 19th century when Mother Superior Margaret Smythe lived among her fellow nuns in an isolated monastery in Ireland. But even after days of rest, Margaret still didn't feel any better. And that's when the doctor decided to run some tests. When the results came back, both he and Margaret were shocked. She found a small opening in the wall and managed to crawl through it. She made a small hole in the wall big enough for her to fit in, and then she crawled through it and hid. She brought some food and water with her so that she could stay in there for as long as she needed to. One of the nuns found Mary in the walls of the monastery, and she was taken out. Visitors have reported hearing strange noises and seeing a shadowy figure walking the halls. She lived in an isolated monastery in Ireland with a group of other nuns. One day, she started to feel unwell and went to see the monastery doctor. He examined her and told her that she had a fever. But after days of rest, she still didn't feel any better. She grew up knowing that she had been adopted, but she never knew who her biological mother was. She was a nun who had taken a vow of celibacy. Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this story, please subscribe and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching. She didn't want to have a baby, but she also didn't want to kill it. She was desperate and she didn't know what to do. In the end, she made a terrible decision that she would regret for the rest of her life. Years later, one of the nuns came forward with the story of what had really happened to Margaret and her baby. She told the story to a local priest, who then shared it with the world. The story quickly spread, and people were fascinated by the tale of the nun who got pregnant and sealed her baby in the walls. The doctor then ran some tests and told her that she was pregnant. She was horrified because the only way she could get pregnant was by having sex, but she had never had sex. Some have even claimed to see the ghost of the baby, Mary, playing in the courtyard. Margaret was desperate. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't keep the baby because she wasn't married. So after she had recovered from giving birth, she left the monastery and started a new life. For years, no one knew what had happened to her or her baby, but eventually the truth came out. One of the nuns found Mary in the walls of the monastery, and she was taken out. People were shocked to discover that there had been a baby hidden in the walls of the monastery all this time. They wondered why Margaret had done it and where she had gone. Some people said that she had killed her baby, but that wasn't true. Margaret had simply given her up for adoption, and she didn't want to give birth in public. So she made a terrible decision. She crawled through a small opening in the wall of the monastery and hid in a small space inside the wall. She brought food and water with her so that she could stay in there for as long as she needed to. She covered the hole with bricks and mortar and waited for her baby to be born. Whether or not these stories are true, they make for a fascinating and spooky tale. People were shocked to discover that there had been a baby hidden in the walls of the monastery all this time. They wondered why Margaret had done it and where she had gone. Some people said that she had killed her baby, while others said that she had simply given it up for adoption. No one knew the truth until many years later, when one of the nuns came forward with the story of what had really happened. She didn't want anyone to find out what she was doing, so she covered the hole with some bricks and mortar. Then she settled in and waited for her baby to be born. The doctor told her that she was pregnant. How could this be? Margaret hadn't been with a man in years. She was getting close to giving birth, and she was starting to get scared. She didn't know if she could really do this. She was a nun, after all, and she had taken a vow of celibacy. She didn't want to have a baby, but she also didn't want to kill it. She prayed for guidance, but she never got an answer. In the end, she decided that she would give birth to her baby and then give it up for adoption. She didn't know where the baby would go, but she knew that someone else would take care of it. She was a nun who had taken a vow of celibacy. After she had recovered from giving birth, Margaret started to make plans to leave the monastery. She knew that she couldn't stay there anymore. She had given birth to a baby, and she needed to move on. She left Mary in the care of the other nuns and set off to start a new life. She knew that the only way she could get pregnant was by having sex. But how could that be possible? Life was peaceful, and all of the nuns were leading quiet lives devoted to God. That is until Margaret started feeling unwell. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. The results come back that you have a fever and that you're pregnant. She thought it was just stress or maybe a little bit of burnout. After all, she had been a nun for many years, and her life had always been busy. But as time went on, Margaret's symptoms got worse and worse. She was constantly feeling tired and weak, and she also started to feel a strange pain in her stomach. She tried to push through it at first, but eventually she had to admit to herself that something was wrong. The doctor is shocked and confused because it's impossible for you to be pregnant since you're a nun who has vowed to remain celibate. What would you do in this situation? Well, if you were this nun, you did what she did. At first, Margaret didn't pay much attention to how she was feeling. Frightened, she went to see the monastery doctor. He examined her and told her that she had a high fever and needed to rest. Margaret was horrified and didn't know what to do. She had never been pregnant before, and she certainly wasn't planning on having a baby. She knew that she couldn't keep the baby. She was a nun, and her life was dedicated to God. She didn't want to bring a child into the world and raise it without a father. She knew that she couldn't give the baby the love and attention it needed. After much thought, she decided that the only option she had was to get rid of the baby. But how could she do that? She couldn't exactly tell the other nuns what was going on. They would probably kick her out of the monastery. And she didn't want to give birth in public. She was a nun after all. So she needed to find a way to hide her pregnancy and give birth in secret. That's when she came up with a plan. She decided to seal her baby in the walls of the monastery. Days turned into weeks, and Margaret's baby got bigger and bigger. Finally, the day arrived, and Margaret gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Mary. For years, no one knew what had happened to Margaret or her baby, but eventually, the truth came out. They say that the ghost of the nun who got pregnant and sealed her baby in the walls still haunts the monastery to this day. Now let's get back to the story. So Mother Superior Margaret Smythe was a nun who had taken a vow of celibacy. So how could she be pregnant? After 9 months, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Mary, but she knew that she couldn't keep her baby. As for Mary, she was raised by a kind family who loved her very much. Some people were angry at Margaret for what she had done, but most people understood why she had done it. What do you think? Was Margaret right to do what she did? Should she have kept her baby or given it up for adoption?